Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you for joining our second monthly live number 4. Big welcome and thank you for being here. Today, I see there are less people than usual, which kind of surprises me, but yeah, we will have the recording, so people will be able to watch the recording on our YouTube channel after that. This second monthly live number 4 will be extremely interesting. We're having Fjelltopp. This is a social enterprise on a mission to help harmonize health data around the globe. They're building and maintaining second instances for the United Nations AIDS Relief Fund. We will learn more about their projects from speakers Dr. Jonathan Berry, who's the CEO at Fjelltopp, and Technical Director Tomasz Sabala. Before I give them the opportunity to present themselves, I'd like to say a few moderation words and housekeeping items as always. First, in case you haven't yet attended Second Monthly Live, this is a monthly web series where each third Wednesday of the month we meet to connect and explore different topics within and around SICAN. The agenda for today's meetup is: first, as always, we're going to have introduction round where our speakers will introduce themselves and will tell us more about their organization. This will be followed by their presentation. After the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session where we'll open the floor for your questions. Last but not least, we have the community announcements and sharing. If somebody wants to share something with the community, feel free to do it. Finally, we have the closing round. There are 2 ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and go ahead, or you can drop your questions in the chat. As I mentioned, we will be having Q&A sessions, so you're very welcome to share your questions and thoughts in this part. If you want to add things to the agenda, feel free to do it in the meeting doc. I will drop a link in the chat in a second. And as always, I encourage you, open the meeting doc, drop your name, affiliation, what brings you to SICAN. You can add some suggestions for topics. Always great to have your input. This way we can frame our future discussions. I'll drop all the links in the chat, so no worries. And yeah, I already mentioned, but the meeting is being recorded, so it will be uploaded to our YouTube account. And with that being said, listening mode, and over to our speakers, Jonathan and Thomas. Let me know if everything is okay on your side and you can share your screen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Brill. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having us. And I also think, it's just fantastic that we're finally getting these webinars together on SICAN stuff. This is really great. I've been really enjoying following the videos on YouTube. And I know Tomek has been able to attend some of them in person himself as well. Yeah, so my name is Jonathan Berry. I am technically CEO of this company, Fjelltopp, that we've created. Previously I was working as a consultant for the World Health Organization in Jordan. I was contracted out there during the middle of the Syrian refugee crisis to help build some public health surveillance tools as they dealt with that crisis back in 2015. And it was out of that project, the public health surveillance project, that this whole kind of company and team grew. The project did well. It was taken out of Jordan to some other countries, Madagascar, Somalia, Central African Republic. And essentially it was just gathering information about disease diagnoses and symptoms and medications and processing that information and visualizing that information for the ministries of health. But that's how I got into UN stuff. It was just by chance through a friend of a friend. And we kind of built what we have around that. And it was an absolute joy to welcome Tomek to the team, who is now our Chief Technical Director. So I will ask him to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Tomasz Sabala. I'm also very, very grateful and happy to be here with you and being able to present some of the parts of our work. As Jonathan introduced, I'm focused on the technical aspect for the company, trying to be like the technical reader, finding like nice and industry standard solutions. And during the past recent years, I'm very like happy and heavily impressed by the SICAN software and the community around it. A lot of our work is based on the SICAN software and surrounding extensions. And it's just like super exciting to give this knowledge back in a little bit. We're hoping to present some of our SICAN approach today, and also maybe start some conversations around it by sharing our challenges and hearing your opinions about our issues. So yeah, thank you very much.
I think the other thing it's important to note is that we are both coming at this from a technical perspective. I am a doctor, but I'm not a proper doctor. I'm a doctor of computers. It sometimes helps if there's some vagueness about that in our industry, but my background is in computing and physics prior to turning my mind to public health and harmonizing health data. Great. Well, I mean, one of the privileges, actually, before I get going, I'm just going to make sure I set my clock so I don't go over too much. One of the privileges of my job is that I get to travel lots, at least I got to travel lots before lockdown. Because as I say, we work with ministries of health and United Nations staff around the world to help them manage their health data. Harmonizing health data is the mission that we are on. And some of the countries we work with literally are the poorest countries in the world: Central African Republic, Somalia, Madagascar. And we've also worked with a lot of other sub-Saharan African countries and West African countries. And one thing that I continuously keep coming back to is that health data management is hard, and it's also chronically under-resourced at a national level, especially in these low and middle income countries. And I guess this isn't surprising, since it's a very real challenge here in the UK as well. Someone needs to teach my government that Excel is not a database, I think. And I think perhaps one of the worst things I've seen was when someone was sending me a screenshot of a spreadsheet pasted inside a Word document and then attached to an unencrypted email. And so, we've seen a lot of things. Managing health data is hard, and we're super interested in how we can help deliver tools and capacity building for sound data management in the health sector around the world. And so the presentation today, just the way we're going to structure it is we're going to be thinking about 6 principles of sound data management. I'm not expecting anything here to be earth-shatteringly new to anyone, but I hope it is a constructive way to think about the problem, and we'd really value your thoughts on whether we've missed anything as we go through this presentation. Firstly, we want to balance flexible access and robust security. We also want to ensure that metadata is kept as complete as possible. We want to be validating as early as possible and as often as possible. We want to version everything. By that, I mean not just the data, but the metadata and the schemas. And we want to automate everything that can be automated. And we want a clear process for archiving final data in a reliable, fail-safe location. So my intention is over the next 15 minutes just to dig into some of the successes and the challenges we've seen working with SICAN explicitly to fulfill these principles, drawing on our experience working with the United Nations AIDS Relief Fund, or UNAIDS for short. So before we talk about principles, let's give a bit of context to this work with UNAIDS. AIDS, if you don't know, stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, and it is a disease. It's a killer. It's caused by human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, and it essentially damages your ability to fight disease and infection. And in 2020, 37.7 million people were living with HIV around the globe. Of those people, 31.6 million people knew that they were HIV positive. Knowing your HIV status is really important if you want to stop spread of the disease and make sure that everyone who should be is on treatment. 27.5 million people were on treatment in 2020. There's a treatment called antiretroviral treatment, and it's been a huge success over the last couple of decades. And if you respond successfully to this treatment, you end up with what's called a suppressed viral load, which essentially means that the disease is dormant. It's not cured, but it's dormant within your body. And 24.9 million people in 2020 were exhibiting suppressed viral loads. It's actually a huge public health success in many ways, although there's still real challenge in here as well. And UNAIDS has been fighting and leading that fight against HIV for a long time now. But what you might ask as I'm talking you through this is, okay, so how do we know these numbers? These are big numbers and not easy to estimate. Well, I know them because I went to a website, aidsinfo.unaids.org. It will map out the number of people living with HIV, the number of new infections, the number of people on treatment, the number of people with viral load suppression, all these sorts of information. And essentially, it's the culmination of a huge statistical estimates process. One way we can try and measure this is to send people knocking on doors, quite literally, and asking about the HIV disease. These large-scale surveys can happen, they do happen, but they're very, very expensive. So we have to use statistics to interpolate and estimate around that survey data. UNAIDS is supporting every country in the world to come up with these statistical estimates. And this estimates process, the process of creating the estimates, ingests a lot of data. Public health surveillance data from the National Public Health Surveillance System. This is testing data, treatment data. These surveys, these household surveys, population data, census data, geographic data, these are the boundaries of the country, subnational boundaries as well, if we want to have subnational estimates. And then other public health indicators like age, sex, fertility, rate ratio, and things. And all this data goes into a complex network of stakeholders and software tools. That, traditionally, all these tools and these people were trying to handle all these different data sources, and it was happening for every country around the world, for every year around the world, and it was quite a mess. And so the idea was, quite simply, to put a CKAN instance right at the heart of that complex process. So CKAN in this context is a data management platform rather than a data publishing platform. And we chose it because it's open source, because it's well supported, and a high number of valuable features, of course, the interoperable API. I've already introduced the company. We won the work on the UN Global Marketplace. It was a tender that we bid on. And we've been working on this since 2018, I think. So we've been working on this for a while now. What we came up with is the AIDS data repository. It's a CKAN instance. It should look fairly familiar. You can go to it, adr.unaids.org. It's running CKAN 2.9.4. It's almost on Python 3. We're not quite there yet. It's storing health data for over 40 countries across Africa, as well as Haiti and the Caribbean. And we have over 700 users. These are mostly Ministry of Health staff or staff from research institutions, NGOs around the world, CDC, and UNICEF, and others. So I hope that's the context, that's the background. I hope that makes sense. So let's talk about some of the principles of implementation. So the first thing that we were super keen to introduce to this estimates process is flexible access and security. We wanted to stop people sending all this data around by unencrypted email. We wanted to make sure it was clear where the one true source of data was, centralize that process. Obviously, CKAN provides loads of tools out of the box for this, which is really, really great. A few things we've done on top of core CKAN features. is we've used the extension CCANX restricted to provide resource level access configuration. The big idea behind this, we catalog data publicly. So we make the metadata public, but we make the data locked down and secure. Unfortunately, open data is not really a thing in many of the countries we work with. Data is knowledge, and it's guarded jealously by both governments and NGOs. And as part of our push for more interagency collaboration, we believe there's a lot of mileage in the principle of open metadata, even if we can't persuade people to open up the data itself. So CCANX restrictions really helps us do that. The other thing to note is that we have implemented our own extension to allow people to register, to log in, to search for other users by email, so that they can just forget their username. We don't do away with the username, but we do make it possible to just completely forget your username if need be. Users were forgetting usernames, and it was just a user experience nightmare. Yeah, thanks to CCANX restricted for that. And also you can go and find the email as username extension in our organization GitHub repository if you're interested. The second principle, we were seeking complete metadata in everything. And of course, the problem here is that humans are flaky. You ask a human to do something, they'll do it sometimes, but not always. So we're super keen to auto-populate as much of this metadata as possible. And we've used CCANX scheming to do that. So we schema the data sets, and we schema not only the data sets, but also the resources that make up a desired data set. So you can see in the screenshot on the left. And with our extension of CCANX scheming, it's possible to basically pre-specify names of resources, descriptions for resources, and we also pre-specify a frictionless table schema for resources. And this is a JSON schema that lets you specify the structure of a table. It came out of frictionless data. I know we have a lot in common with frictionless data. Even were we born out of frictionless data, I'm not quite sure what the relationship is between CCAN and frictionless data. But it's been super helpful to us to use those frictionless data table schemas. And from that, we hope we can auto-populate the data dictionary. We're auto-populating a lot of the metadata so that we're not requiring users to remember to enter it. So we want complete metadata. This is really, really important. And the final principle that I'll talk about before I hand over to Tomek to finish the presentation off is validation. And so here we're using the extension CCANX validation, which uses goodtables.py, which again was born out of frictionless data. I believe it's now part of the frictionless package. But essentially this uses the frictionless data table schemas to validate the data, and there's a nice UI there for presenting the errors and the error reports and these validation badges next to each resource. So we've extended that again to do some new stuff. We can validate tabular GeoJSON data, for instance. GeoJSON data is pushed into the data store. We're validating foreign keys, so our antiretroviral treatment data is subnational data that depends on the geographic data, and we need to make sure that we're validating that each bit of ART data is attached to the right geographic data ID, so we can validate that. There are still some challenges around this, and I would love to know whether what's changed, because I think this CCANX validation extension is still using the old goodtables.py module. But this has proved successful, and again, it's heavily used, heavily helpful in this process of generating HIV estimates. I'm going to hand over to Tomek, who's going to finish off with the last three principles. Yeah, go for it, Tomek.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just take over the screen. Yeah, so another fourth principle that we would like to talk about is about versioning, and we call it version everything. As Jonathan mentioned, CKAN in our usage is a data management platform. So the data set lives like quite a long life before it's ready. And from CKAN 2.9, there was like a big feature activity stream that gave us like the possibility to version the metadata out of the box, like without any more changes. However, our process requires also versioning of the resource data themselves, like resource files. And this we were able to achieve with help of Datopian projects, mainly CKAN-X blob storage, that with help of Giftless service lets us store resources data in S3, and hence making the data part of the resource like part of the metadata. So then we were also able to version the resource data themselves. And with help of extension CKAN-X versions, we were able to build nice UI and an API on top of this, letting our users create versions and maintain the versions and manage them. Also with help of API, which is like a very important thing for us due to interoperability with other pieces of HIV tools software. And some challenges that we met while working on this. The first one and the biggest one is to get the user experience right of creating these versions. We are dealing with quite wide user base with different level of technical background. So this is like our basically mission and responsibility to present them with the like best way how to manage their data sets and also making it as easy as possible. ADR is yet another tool that the users need to use, so it needs to be as streamlined as possible. And then another challenge here was that we decided to go with the dataset level versioning. However, it would be nice to also keep the versioning at the resource level, but it's quite hard how to meet those two approaches together and make them exist in a single user experience. Then coming back to the next principle is to automate wherever possible. So this is the power of software to make the human lives a little easier. And I think our biggest achievement here was to leverage the power of the CKAN harvesters. So some part of the HIV data is coming from DHIS2 servers. DHIS2 is an open source technology used to manage health information systems in developing countries. So many countries that are working with us use these systems. And of course, each national system has its own slightly different metadata structure. However, our modeling software that later gets data from ADR requires, of course, standardized metadata. So we have created a custom harvester that lets users create mapping for the metadata and then enable automated pulls of data from like third-party systems. And this has made like automation also resolves a lot of bugs that might happen from manual labor. And some challenges that we met while working on this is that harvesters from other data sources would be also like quite custom and quite problematic to implement. So it's a little hard to have like a generic solution how to integrate fetching data from any other third party. And also one of the challenging things was that our DHIS2 harvester output are separate data sets, and user usually needs to almost like copy paste resources between these data sets. And there's no such a functionality at the moment. So this leaves us with the last principle, clear and reliable archiving. This is the most challenging. I hope you can still see my screen. It's just going blank on my preview.
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So first of all, from like a backend point of view, we have like a fail-safe backups of data and files. So because our CKAN is running on AWS Cloud, so we're using RDS as a database. It has like built-in backup mechanism. Also, our files are stored in S3 with Giftless. So this is also like backup out of the box. So this is all that simple. However, in like a sound data management, it would be good to have like a finalization process or like locking data sets after they are finalized. So in this like long living data set, when the user are creating and modifying and polishing up the metadata and the data itself, it's good to like especially mark a data set when it's complete and final, and let like other users reading the data in CKAN to also get to know easily whether is this data set still in progress or does it have some final numbers that I can have like a closer, more careful look. However, this functionality from our point of view is really hard to achieve within CKAN ecosystem at the moment. We have it like very high on our to-do list, and we will be trying to tackle these issues in the upcoming future. One of the steps that we've taken forward was we started working on the CKANX short URLs, basically to shorten the static URLs to the dataset and resources, so they are easier to include in the literature or bibliography in some publications instead of this very lengthy dataset /ID resource /ID. So in conclusion, CKAN was originally intended for like data publishing. So this is, in my opinion, like its core functionality. We have flexed it a little bit for data management, that it played like really well. I did an excellent job here. With help of the extensions that are built mostly by community, but also for the core CKAN team, it's very, very easy to customize CKAN also for such like a custom needs and custom workflows, as in our case. And as we already said, more work to be done. We're really excited to starting being part of this community. We are very like valuing work of all of the members and all of like the software developers that are working on the project. So thank you all very, very much. And we hope that we'll be able to give as much back as we can. So we are happy to answer any questions if you have any. Of course, you can reach to us later by email or by our Twitter. A lot of our team members are also members of your Jitter channel, so you can try to reach out to us there as well. So that will be it. Thank you very much.
Just great presentation. Really excited about the work that you've shown off here. We're looking at the validation extension right now, and seeing that you've put it to such great use is very encouraging. We were just looking at it in terms of what kind of work is going to be involved in supporting 2.9 and so on, but it's good to see that there are people working on it, actively using it, along with some of the other extensions. You talk about data versioning is something that we'd really like to get into. So I'd love to hear about any challenges that you had with that, or if you're happy with the setup that you're using right now.
Sure. So maybe I can answer the first part. I think first of all, where is there a good place to share our slides? I mean, we can share them from our website, obviously, but is there anywhere else you'd like us to share the slides?
If you send it to me, I can take care of that. I can post them on the CKAN.org website, for example.
We will do that. We absolutely will do that. We're delighted to be able to get involved in the community, and whether or not it's appropriate for us to be attending core development meetings, I'm not so sure. So this remains at the moment a team of about 1.7 FTE working on this project. So I mean, there's only so much time that we're managing to keep spare, but we would love to find ways to give back to the community. So I'm just going to say, speak to Tomek about that that particular issue.
I must say that I've already been once to the CKAN Dev meeting, and I was very warmly welcomed. It was like a couple of months back, and I just try to come back. It just like goes down on my like calendars, usually some distractions, but I can do a better job and maybe come back more often than just once in my life so far. Yeah, but certainly.
Great. And then you asked about the validation extension. Yes, it has been really helpful. One of the things we've been wrestling with is the fact that it requires a particular like column ordering. And I had a kind of a question to throw back to you folks about whether that was like a design decision that you made, that frictionless data, that good tables requires columns to be ordered exactly in the same way that they're required in the table schema. This is a problem we're wrestling with at the moment. People want to be able to throw in extra columns or like move the columns around without it failing validation. Is that something that you guys have already faced?
Can people hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. Right, so I wrote the original SeekNX validation implementation. I didn't wrote like good tables, which is the actual ones that do the validation. But I recall having the same problem and pass some option to the validation, some validation option to like ignore the ordering of the columns. So I can remember it off the top of my head, but I can provide it on Gitter or whatever when I find the answer to this.
Okay, well, we'll follow up with you then concerning questions about that, definitely. But it has been really helpful. And the versioning work, it's been really great to work with Datopian on this. They have done some really incredible work with Giftless and SeekNX blob storage and SeekNX auth service, all of which are, and SeekNX versions, all of which are required to make this happen. It's completely stripping out the file store and putting back in a pluggable Git-based file store service. So there are quite a lot of moving parts in making it happen. It took us quite a while to kind of get everything working and tested thoroughly and out to production. But it was super important for UNAIDS, and it has already proven really useful. And when trying to track, well, what have people done? How have things changed in the past? So one of the things that we were working on was getting that all integrated with the CKAN 2.9.4 activity stream, which Tomek put a lot of work into. And now you can go back through the activity stream, click on a previous version, download the resource files from that version. Tomek, do you want to add anything beyond just kind of a comment about all the moving parts?
Yeah, so Dennis has asked a question about like the versioning flow in the chat. It's a little too early for us to share any detail like comments and impression, because this is just the first, basically the feature is very new. And our system is heavily used from November to January, so this is yet to be tested in the field. However, the versioning flow right now is quite simple. Basically, with help of this giftless storage, basically as part of metadata, we're storing the path in S3 of the file, like keeping it very, very short. So basically, the data file is part of the metadata, and all of the surrounding validation metadata around it are also like basically static text, whether this resource was validated successfully or unsuccessfully. And schema is also part of the metadata. So we're having like a very, very simple system. We're basically freezing the metadata of the resource, and we let user travel back and forth in time on the activity stream. We will see how it works. We'll see whether this is gonna meet all of the end user needs later this year, and then we'll probably pivot the approach. I'm not sure if this is a satisfactory answer to your query.
No, thank you. I appreciate you walking through it. Thanks.
Yeah.
We did have a situation where we had to change the schemas halfway. So what Tomek mentioned there was this November to like spring period that's super busy for us, and that's because this is the period where all the countries are generating their HIV estimates. And we did have a situation where the schemas had to be changed halfway through that period, and so it became utterly essential that we were kind of versioning our package schemas and frictionless table schemas, so that we knew which bits of data were attached to which bits of metadata, and it worked very well doing it that way. So yeah, I mean, I think that was an early lesson learned, which is that versioning all those schemas was really important to be able to tie down data to metadata.
At this stage, I see it's primarily a data exchange. Do you envision doing any storytelling on this? And what tools do you envision if you do so?
So storytelling. So data visualization is quite a key part of the vision for the tool. This is primarily, I think this is mostly about validation of data early and often. So part of the process of preparing all this data is on a quarterly basis. Countries are gathering data, and then UNAIDS wants to encourage them to review their data, and they want to provide easy tools to do that. So the hope is that they can drop their data into the ADR, it will generate a lot of nice visualizations for them, and it will run all the validations for them, and it will tell them, oh, you need to fix this, and it will show them some nice graphs, which will help them to see whether their data is plausible, for instance, or not. We haven't been able to get into this with the level of detail we'd like to yet. But my hope is that because we have kept all these frictionless data table schemas and we understand the structure of the data, that we could actually draw some fairly involved visualizations of the data because we know what it is. So, we could use pandas or whatever to, or whether maybe there's a JavaScript library to draw some, particularly with the antiretroviral therapy data, they're interested in timescales and time series across different variables across different areas in the country, and so being able to create these kind of visualizations that are spanning across multiple resources. And doing multiple steps of transformation prior to running the visualization is something we're interested in but haven't got into yet.
Also, maybe worth mentioning is that Jonathan has shared a link to aidsinfo.unaids.org, which is like a little like higher level like visualization and spatial visualization platform for UNAIDS about AIDS information. And like primary goal of ADR is data exchange. So this is what we're focusing mostly, like any visualization or possible like storytelling could be secondary or like a third tier objective for the project.
Yeah, it's not our job to visualize the actual final outputs of this process. That's AIDSinfo's job. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Do we have more questions? If we have, you can raise a hand. I don't see any questions, so thank you very much. It was an amazing presentation, and I apologize for the inconvenience with the spammers. We'll take care so that this doesn't happen again. Yeah, and thank you.
Very glad to be here. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been great to meet you.